Welcome back to Society Case Files. My name is Robert, and today I'm going to talk about Borderlands 4. If you like this kind of content and you want to see more, please subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. Otherwise, we're going to dive right in. So, Borderlands 4 has been sold as a course correction for Borderlands 3. And I've had a chance to play it a little bit, and I've also watched an absolute ton of videos in order to sort of get ready to, well, not only to talk about it, but to decide if I even wanted it. Because to be honest, I really disliked Borderlands 3. I did not have fun with it. And I was lost long before the story elements that made people mad came about. I don't really care as much about endgame and Borderlands stuff. For me, Borderlands is more of an adventure game, kind of a game like, I don't know, Doom or something, where after I've finished the story, I'm kind of done. I don't really feel an overall need to continually pursue bigger and better gear in a game like this one. But I totally understand the desire because it's there and there are bigger bosses to fight and they sometimes add some pretty cool stuff. And in this particular case, they've got all kinds of plans, new things coming up that should entertain people for a very long time. Considering the price of this game and games in general, it's always nice when they offer the opportunity to really keep people engaged for as long as possible. In this case, they're talking months, maybe years. I mean, they're not quite as crazy as Dune, where Dune Awakening is trying to say that they've got a 10-year plan. But, you know, it's Borderlands. They're going to come out with some stuff and do what it takes to keep it interesting. Post-launch, they're even talking about adding Vault Hunters to the game. So it's pretty crazy. And I think that for the most part, not just from the videos I've watched, but from playing it as well, I think they've done quite a bit to turn around from the previous experience. What's interesting is that nobody talks about the pre-sequel. I guess that must have been made by somebody else besides Gearbox. I can't honestly remember, but it was one of the games that I beat, and I had some pretty serious issues with it. Much as I found it fun, probably my biggest problem with the game was the fact that it became very repetitive and you had to run back and forth, and even made a joke of it at one point, which was not only kind of funny, but very annoying, to say the least. But as far as the tentpole versions, Borderlands, Borderlands 2, Borderlands 3, blah, 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 I think that most people would probably say that Borderlands 2 was their favorite. I liked Borderlands 1 quite a bit, but it did feel like more of a tech demo of what they wanted to do as opposed to a fully fledged game. Borderlands 2 really captured everything they needed to do, and I thought it did it well. Borderlands 3, kind of a stumble, lots of stuff wrong. Borderlands 4, while I think it's a course correction, it's also a pretty different path with this huge open world, all these methods of travel, that kind of stuff. It does really feel quite a bit different. And what's interesting is that a lot of people report some pretty bad performance. And what's strange about that is that, I mean, the graphics are good for Borderlands. They look like, you know, that cel-shaded craziness. But when you start running around in the open world and you're really high up, maybe you're using the glider or something, it doesn't really look that great to me. I mean, it looks cel-shaded and that's cool and all, but I just don't see how the performance is that bad. And why does it require such a beefy machine? I mean, Unreal Engine 5, obviously, but it just seems like, how did that happen? You know, the graphics aren't that insane. The particles aren't nearly as crazy as even Diablo 4. And yet, it is just tragic how bad it's working. And just to talk about that a little bit, I'm on the Steam page right now. It's currently got mixed reviews. And here are some of what they say. Game crashed on character select for $70. Nah. Product refunded after 0.2 hours. We got Borderlands 4 as a, bad word show. $70 for a game that I can't even get 60 frames with better spec than recommended on lowest settings is criminal. And the gameplay looked fine. So I think that the primary theme here, as I'm looking through these, is that people are not pleased with the optimization. And I kind of had that feeling. You know, when I was listening to the videos, they were talking about it, and the higher up at Gearbox was trying to defend it and talking about how people who had lower specs shouldn't expect super high performance. But then people were retorting and being like, dude, the people who are complaining have greater than the recommended, and on and on. It went back and forth. It was pretty ill-advised in my opinion. But now I'm looking here, and sure enough, regardless of the fact that they heard it long in advance, their day one patch did not help. Here's another one. Terrible optimization. Another Unreal Engine 5 casualty. Not worth buying in its current state unless you have a NASA PC. Unoptimized and horrible. Already refunded as it doesn't run beyond 20 to 30 frames per second. Terrible, terrible performance. Worst I've ever seen. Turned it down to low graphics presents and couldn't hit 60 frames even with FSR upscaling on my RX 69 XT. Pretty rough. So some of the positive reviews, on the other hand, talk more about the game. So like this person gives it a rating of 9 to 10. Wild, addictive, and packed with style. He's got some videos that you can go look at. This person got 60 frames somehow. Awesome game. Just make sure you have a good PC. Maybe the problem is that the people giving it mixed reviews don't have the greatest PCs, but you know, they're posting their stats and it sounds like they're pretty much fine. So I don't know. This is going to be the sticking point for Borderlands 4. The sad fact is they've made a game that is probably really great, at least as far as this type of game goes, and they're going to be mired in a bad release because of the performance and the optimization. Now, did they have to hit this mark? I don't know. Maybe they should have just let it come out in October when the Switch 2's version comes out. At least then they would have had, what, another 2 weeks to try and clean it up? I don't know. Maybe that's not enough time to do anything, so there was no point to doing so. But as a result of this, you know, we're sitting here with a mixed review. Now, on the opposite end of this, I went to Metacritic and checked out their reviews, and it was sitting at a pretty high 80. The top review was 100%, and it said Borderlands 4 is a masterpiece. The first couple of hours of play, I didn't get masterpiece. I got kind of fun. It's chaotic. It's pretty ridiculous. And I would also say that it is designed very specifically with co-op in mind. I believe that the game really is designed for you to be playing with someone else. I don't think playing alone is necessarily the way. It's not that it was overly hard on the normal difficulty. It was just pretty clear that if you had another person, then it would be a lot more balanced. I don't know if that's the true case, and if I'm just sensitive to the fact that it just felt a little bit too noisy. And what I mean by that is that there was just so much going on. It would have been really nice to have somebody else to, you know, maybe watch your back or at least take the left side of the screen or something to sort of help. If I had to put Borderlands 4 into a category of some sort, if I had to compare it, I'd say it's kind of the love child of Destiny and Doom. It does borrow from Destiny quite a bit. You have this thing called Echo, which is just a ghost. I mean, it is. And then it just doesn't resurrect you. Actually, it kind of does. It hovered over me and sent me back to the spawn point. And then you've got a Sparrow. I don't remember exactly what they call it. I think it may have been a Digi-Runner, but it's a Sparrow. It doesn't quite swoop around as much. It's not that feeling of a speeder bike from Star Wars, but it's kind of the same thing. One of the things that's always annoyed me when I've played Borderlands games is the reloads. Guns often don't have that big a magazine, and the enemies are they're not horribly bullet spongy, but it's bad enough that you're reloading multiple times, and in some cases you end up with like a pretty decent gun, like a shotgun in my case. And you're reloading it after every shot because, you know, it's a double-barreled shotgun. It fires, then you reload, and that's annoying. But especially it's annoying when that's your best gun for taking guys down quick. I got my hands on an elemental shotgun shortly after, and that thing at least had 8 rounds, and it was a lot better. But all around, I still hate reloading in the game. It's just so annoying to be constantly watching those slow-ass animations of loading the gun. I mean, I get it. This is part of the game. It's been there since Borderlands 1, but I'm not going to pretend that I've liked it ever. It's just silly. That's where it departs from Doom, since you're not reloading any gun in that game. You just run out of ammo and grab another one and continue to go crazy. But I compare it to Doom because it really does feel like you are constantly in action. I thought that traveling over the open world would be a lot more boring, to be honest. I thought that there'd be these big stretches where nothing was happening, but I mean, I was being constantly attacked. I was being hit by weird animals or shot by people or on and on and on. It was just pretty madness, honestly. But the game itself does keep you entertained, I'd say, if you can get it to work. Now, speaking a little bit about the story, they have tried to make it a little bit more serious. I read some reviews where people like they've abandoned all the humor. Well, they still try. I mean, it's not necessarily funny, the stuff they do, but they've tried. You know, there's asides and stuff. They're a little bit tired because, you know, we've heard them before. If you've played all of the Borderlands before, there's not really a lot new in the beginning. It's the same kind of thing that you hear from people when they're like for example, at the beginning when you're dealing with the enemies, they're like, you need to surrender and you'll live. And they're like, well, let's be honest, you're not going to live either way, but at least if you surrender, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, they do that kind of humor, but you know, it is what it is. It's Borderlands. I think that it's not as like disgusting as it had been in the past, but to be fair, I haven't gone super deep into it myself. Now, watching all the videos I did, reading all of the articles and all the stuff that I pretty much deep dived so that I could find out if I wanted to spend over $80 on a game, they pretty much did suggest that in their more extended playtime than mine, they did encounter some more of the crude humor that you would expect, but mostly on side missions, whereas the primary mission, it's a little bit more serious. Of course, there's Claptrap. Apparently, and I didn't look for this, but in a video they did say that you can actually reduce his volume and slow him down so that he's not quite as annoying. I guess in Borderlands 3 he was over the top annoying. I didn't play that one long enough to figure that out. As far as the characters go, I only played the Siren. I didn't really feel any connection to the other characters. They didn't really appeal to me. But I will say this, after running around and watching the animation reload for my guns over and over, I did think about the melee character and thought about maybe that would be a better choice. So you could just run around and smack people instead. The primary power that I picked, which is basically this grow wings and have these eldritch energy balls that you throw, I found it to be a little underwhelming in the early game, but you know, there's a pretty big skill tree to work from. And one of the things that they've really espoused in this is that there will be theory crafting and builds, things like even set bonuses with a special system in place, and that the weapons will be more varied, and that all of the manufacturers of guns have come together so that you can get like well, they'll mix and match now as opposed to be specific. Back in the day, each of the guns had a manufacturer, and based on which one it was, you'd know that if maybe it was going to be an elemental weapon or explosive or rapid fire or whatever. But now they can all be combined, so you could actually have some pretty bizarre guns, and the randomness will be a lot more crazy. Something that was a little silly is that early on, you don't have access to a vendor for at least, I don't know, long enough for you to fill your inventory completely and have to leave quite a bit of loot behind. It was something a friend of mine who was playing at the same time actually reached out to me, and he's like, hey, have you even seen a vendor yet? But I had been pretty far along by the time he asked. So there's plenty of vendors after you get through sort of the prologue / tutorial. I would say that for the most part, they did a good job of informing you on the new systems. I did have to go to the keyboard key bindings to find out how to summon the vehicle. I don't remember if it told me the button. It probably did, and I just missed it. As far as how my power worked, I wasn't entirely sure on that one either. Had to do a little bit of trial and error. But by and large, I think that it's a fairly accessible game. But anyway, I don't know how this game is going to do long term. I don't know how people are going to feel about it if they patch it. I don't know if people are going to give it another chance. Folks seem pretty upset in their reviews, and sometimes that means, you know, we're done and I'm going to walk away. But, you know, it is what it is. I kind of feel like the majority of players are at least limping along. And if you're on console, I'm sure it works fine. I obviously have not tried it on the Xbox, but You know, the Xbox should be more optimized, I would hope. Depends on that day one patch, I suppose. But anyway, have you played Borderlands 4? Are you excited about it? Did you have performance issues? What are your thoughts? Let me know in the comments below. This is Rob with Society Case Files signing off.